Police officer stopped speeding car. What he found inside was shocking. Officer Fraser's day started out like any other, patrolling the streets and scanning for speeding vehicles. What was otherwise a very normal and routine morning quickly turned into something much more exciting and harrowing. Officer Fraser stopped a speeding Chevrolet Camaro going over 100 miles per hour, ready to step into action and deal with whomever may be inside of it. However, what happened next and what the officer found inside of the vehicle will shock you. Officer Brandon Fraser had always known that his path would lead him to law enforcement. Growing up with a tight-knit community of Warren, Michigan, he was deeply impacted by the stories his grandfather, a retired police officer, would share. These tales were not just about the challenges and dangers of the job, but about the profound difference one could make in the lives of others. This sense of duty and a desire to contribute to the safety and well-being of his community drove Fraser to don the badge. His partner, Officer John Bronston, was a seasoned veteran with a keen sense of intuition honed over years on the force. Bronston had seen it all, from high-speed pursuits to unexpected encounters during routine patrols. Together, they made a formidable team, with Fraser's youthful vigor complementing Bronston's experience. On this particular morning, the officers were starting their shift. Sitting in their patrol car, tucked away behind an overpass with cups of steaming coffee in hand, they were scanning the road for any signs of trouble. This spot was a known hideaway for observing traffic, a place where they could catch speeders or any vehicle exhibiting signs of illegal activity. On the other side of town, in a small cramped apartment, Jenna was juggling the demands of being a single mother to her precious baby girl, Jill. Life had been tough ever since the father had left before Jill was even born. Jenna had taken on 2 jobs to make ends meet, leaving her with little time for anything else. The morning had arrived, and as Jenna prepared for another long day of work, she could hear Jill's cries filling the small apartment. It was a familiar sound, one that tugged at Jenna's heartstrings every time. She knew her baby girl was hungry, but the paycheck from her second job wouldn't come until that night, leaving their cupboards bare. Jill's cries grew louder, and Jenna hurriedly moved around their cramped living space, desperately searching for something to appease her hungry child. Her eyes fell on a bunch of grapes sitting on the kitchen counter. Jenna hesitated, knowing the dangers that grapes posed to a toddler like Jill, especially when she was this hungry. She knelt down beside Jill, who was sitting in her high chair, tears streaming down her little face as she cried out for food in a mix of broken English and toddler speak. Jill whimpered, with her tiny hands reaching out to Jenna. Jenna's heart ached at the sight of her daughter's distress. She tried to comfort Jill, gently patting her back and murmuring soothing words. "I know, sweetheart. Mommy will get you something to eat, okay? Just be patient." But Jill's hunger and desperation were palpable. She continued to cry and beg for food, her eyes filled with tears that mirrored her mother's stress and helplessness. "Food, Mommy," Jill pleaded, her voice quivering. The weight of their difficult circumstances pressed down on Jenna. She knew that the risks associated with giving grapes to a child so young, but the sight of her baby's hunger was unbearable. With a heavy heart and tears in her eyes, Jenna relented. She carefully plucked a grape from the bunch, cut it into tiny pieces, and handed them to Jill, who eagerly grabbed them and began munching. As Jill's hunger was momentarily satisfied, she looked up at her mother with eyes filled with gratitude and innocence. Her words were a mixture of baby babble and genuine appreciation, saying, "Thank you, Mommy." Jenna couldn't hold back her own tears as she watched her child eat the grapes. It was a heartbreaking moment, one that encapsulated the sacrifices a single mother like Jenna made to provide for her child. In that small apartment amidst their daily struggles, the bond between mother and daughter grew stronger, their love and resilience shining through even the toughest of times. Panic and chaos filled the small apartment as Jenna watched Jill, initially thinking her daughter was just satisfied with the grapes. She continued to wash dishes, her mind momentarily eased by the sight of Jill munching on the fruit. But that relief quickly turned to dread when Jenna turned around and saw her precious child gasping for air, her face turning an alarming shade of purple. Panic coursed through Jenna's veins as she realized that Jill was choking on a grape. "Jill, oh my God!" Jenna screamed, rushing towards her daughter. She tried to dislodge the grape, but it was lodged deep in Jill's throat. The baby's frantic gasp for air only added to Jenna's terror. Desperation took hold of Jenna as she turned to her brother Bob, who was standing nearby. "Bob, help, call 911! Jenna's voice trembled with fear as she pleaded with him. Bob, however, stood there in a gaze, his expression blank. He was not known for his quick thinking or problem-solving, and this crisis left him utterly bewildered. "Call 911, I don't have a working phone," he mumbled. Jenna's heart sank further as she realized the gravity of their situation. Her own financial struggles had left her unable to afford a working phone, and Bob, who was currently jobless, faced the same predicament. They were trapped in a terrifying moment with no means to call for immediate help. Frantically, Jenna and Bob scooped up Jill, who was now struggling to breathe, and rushed out of the apartment. They practically threw her into the car and sped off toward the hospital as fast as they could. Panic set the tone for the drive, and the car's engine roared with urgency. Tears streamed down Jenna's face as she gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles turning white. "Hold on, baby, we're gonna get you help," she cried out to Jill, who had now lost consciousness. Bob sat in the passenger seat, his face pale with fear, but he knew he had to stay alert. Jenna's frantic sobs filled the car, and she continued to beg her brother for help. "Bob, please keep talking to her. Try to wake her up." Bob's voice wavered as he tried to obey Jenna's desperate pleas. "Come on, Jill, wake up, sweetie," he murmured. "You're gonna be okay." The hospital was still several agonizing minutes away, and it felt like an eternity. The siblings clung to each other, their hearts heavy with fear and uncertainty. They knew that time was running out, and the fate of their beloved Jill hung in the balance. The morning had started routinely for officers Brandon Fraser and John Bronston, scanning for speeding vehicles, discussing the unpredictable nature of their job. Their conversation, a mix of professional musings and lighthearted banter, was abruptly interrupted by a speeding Chevrolet Camaro, its speedometer undoubtedly clocking over 100 miles per hour. With trained precision, Fraser flicked on the lights and siren, initiating a swift pursuit. Through the loudspeaker, Bronston's authoritative voice boomed, commanding the vehicle to pull over. It took several attempts, but finally the Camaro slowed to a halt. As the officers approached the car, they were met with a scene of sheer panic. A frantic woman was in the driver's seat, tears streaming down her face. Beside her in a child's seat lay an unconscious baby, alarmingly still. The woman, nearly incoherent with distress, pleaded desperately, "My baby stopped breathing, please help." In the passenger seat, the baby's uncle, equally distraught, echoed her pleas. The urgency in their voices pierced the morning air, transforming the routine traffic stop into a critical emergency. Without hesitation, Fraser radioed for medical assistance, his voice steady but laced with urgency. Bronston, drawing on his training and experience, quickly assessed the baby, checking for any signs of breathing or movement. The officers worked with a sense of controlled urgency, aware that every second was crucial. The woman, her hands trembling, explained between sobs that they were rushing to the hospital when they passed the patrol car. Her panic had only compounded upon seeing the police lights, fearing they'd be delayed even further. Fraser spoke calmly, trying to reassure her. "We're here to help. The ambulance is on its way," he said, his tone a mixture of comfort and authority. Meanwhile, Bronston carefully lifted the baby, applying first aid techniques suitable for an infant, his movements precise and gentle. The uncle, huddled next to the car, watched on, his face etched with worry and hope. The morning sun, which had started so promisingly, now cast long, solemn shadows around the scene. As they waited for the ambulance, the officers continued to provide care, their training as first responders kicking in seamlessly. The situation underscored the unpredictable and often harrowing nature of their duty. One moment they were enforcing traffic laws, the next they were the first line of response in a life-threatening crisis. As the officers waited anxiously for the ambulance to arrive, the baby's condition appeared to deteriorate rapidly. Its tiny face had turned a shade of blue and it was no longer breathing. The mother's frantic cries filled the air, making it difficult for Officer Fraser to get any coherent information. Fraser, a father himself, knew the importance of acting swiftly in such situations. He gently but firmly asked the mother, "Could the baby be choking on something?" Her response was barely intelligible amidst her tears, but it was enough to confirm his suspicion. Taking quick action, Fraser carefully took the baby from the woman's trembling arms and laid it gently on his forearm facing down. Bronston, realizing the gravity of the situation, grabbed the radio and urgently contacted medical dispatch. "Dispatch, this is Officer Bronston. We have a choking infant here. EMS needed ASAP." Dispatch, fully aware of the seriousness of the situation, responded promptly, "EMS is on the way, Officer Bronston. Please keep the line open for further instructions." Fraser, focusing all his training and knowledge, delicately inspected the baby's mouth. His large fingers struggled to reach whatever was obstructing the baby's airway. Time felt like an eternity as the baby's color continued to worsen and the mother's cries became more desperate. On the verge of panic, Fraser persisted, making several attempts to dislodge the object. It was a heart-wrenching sight, a seasoned police officer desperately trying to save an infant's life, all while the mother's anguished pleas reverberated in the background. As Fraser's efforts seemed futile, he recalled his training, the same training that equipped him to handle life-threatening situations. With renewed determination, he positioned the baby face down on his forearm and administered several sharp blows to the child's back, ensuring the head was lower than the body. The first few blows yielded no result and Fraser's heart sank. Time was running out. On the fourth blow, something small and foreign flew out of the baby's mouth and the infant gasped for air. A collective sigh of relief swept through the patrol car as the baby, still disoriented and frightened, began to cry. It was a beautiful sound, the cry of life, and it reassured everyone that the worst had been averted. Fraser, his hands trembling, handed the baby back to its mother, who held her child close, tears of joy streaming down her face. Officer Bronston radioed dispatch with a mixture of relief and gratitude. "Dispatch, the baby's breathing now. We've managed to clear the airway." Dispatch responded with evident relief. "That's great news, Officer Bronston. EMS is just around the corner." As the wailing of the baby filled the car, it was a symphony of life, a stark contrast to the heart-stopping silence of moments ago. The mother, clutching her child tightly, couldn't stop thanking the officers, her words filled with gratitude. "You saved my baby, thank you so much!" Bronston, still holding the radio, relayed the good news to dispatch. EMS arrived moments later, their expertise evident as they assessed the baby's condition. Fraser and Bronston, despite their palpable relief, maintained their professionalism, recounting the events for paramedics and providing any necessary information. The uncle, who'd been a silent witness to the entire ordeal, now embraced his sister and his nephew, tears of gratitude in his eyes. The family had narrowly escaped a devastating tragedy, and the officers had played a pivotal role in that rescue. The local news had caught wind of the incident, and reporter Annie was eager to hear Jenna's account. Sitting in the newsroom, she asked, "Officer Fraser, can you describe your reaction when you saw that the baby wasn't breathing?" The officer took a deep breath before responding, "It was a moment of sheer concern and urgency. Your training kicks in and you have to act swiftly. There's no time to hesitate." "Many are calling you a hero for your actions. How do you feel about that?" He felt a bit bashful. "I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm just an officer doing what I'm trained to do. Our job is to protect and serve, and that's what we did that day." Later that day, Officer Fraser accompanied reporter Annie to Jenna's home for the interview. Jenna welcomed them inside, still overwhelmed by the news of the day. "Jenny," Annie began gently, "can you share what was running through your mind when Jill stopped breathing?" Tears welled up in Jenna's eyes as she recounted the frightening moment. "It was like time stopped. I didn't know what to do. All I could think about was getting help for my baby." Annie shifted her focus, asking, "And what can you tell us about Officer Fraser and his actions?" Jenna's face lit up with gratitude as she spoke of the officer. "He's a true hero. If it weren't for him, I don't even want to think about what might have happened. He acted without hesitation, and Jill is alive because of him." The heartfelt praise Jenna expressed for Officer Fraser was a testament to the impact of his quick thinking and bravery that it had on her family. After the interviews, he and Jenna found themselves sitting in her cozy kitchen. She looked at him with tears in her eyes and said, "Officer Fraser, I can't thank you enough for saving Jill's life. You're a true hero." The officer shifted uncomfortably in his chair, a bit baffled from all the attention. "Jenna, I was just doing my job. I'm glad I could help." "No, you went above and beyond. You didn't hesitate for a second, and because of you, my baby's here with me today." "I'm grateful that everything turned out well," he smiled warmly. "But really, it's all part of our duty to protect and serve." Jenna's gratitude was unwavering. She stood up and went to the stove where she had prepared a warm meal. "Please, Officer Fraser, at least let me offer you a meal as a token of our appreciation." He shook his head humbly. "Thank you, Jenna, but I can't accept. I'm just glad Jill is okay." Jenna's eyes welled up again as she placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're a special kind of person, Officer Fraser. You've not only protected us, but also touched our hearts. Thank you." As they continued to talk, he couldn't help but feel grateful for the opportunity to make a difference in Jenna and Jill's lives. If you enjoy harrowing stories of action and excitement where lives hang in the balance, then keep coming back for more.